coming in. Don't lock the door. We're coming in. Who are you?
You're not coming in.
Who are you?
Who under whose
Who are
orders?
you? Who are you?
Who are you, sir?
Do you have business here?
Yes.
Democratic members of Congress barred from entering the Department of Education Friday morning as President Trump continues to threaten to diminish and eventually eliminate the department. On Thursday, 96 members of Congress sent a letter to the acting Secretary of Education requesting a meeting today to discuss Trump's effort to shut down the department. But when they showed up, they were met with locked doors. Jackie Koppell has the latest from outside of the Education Department.
A tense standoff just a short time ago between members of Congress and a security guard in front of the Department of Education. The members of Congress were locked out. They were here, they said, to provide oversight. Now, these are Democratic members, oversight over perceived threats to the Department of Education. They wanted to talk to the acting secretary. NewsNation brings you right there.
We pay for your job. We pay you.
We're members of
We pay you. So what are you going to do? You're going to beat us up if we go in?
I mean, you're going to,
We want you to move out of here.
It's
out of the way.
We all have oversight responsibilities. By what authority
sentence.
can you deny members of Congress their oversight role?
you don't have a business reason to be here.
You do not have authority, sir.
To federal buildings.
We're allowed in there.
So a private security contractor is blocking members of
Members
Congress.
of Congress.
This is a public institution. So are you not aware of members of Congress who have responsibilities on?
We're trying to save your job.
This is the beginning of full transparency of this administration. That's right. The administration that talked about they're going to open the doors to all of these things and show the American public what is going on. They won't even open the door to this building, to members of Congress. We are not posing any threat here.
This man here, who is a federal employee, he told us.
He's not.
Are you a federal employee?
No.
Huh?
Yes. I know he was told to come out here and do this.
Yes,
He was told to come out here and block members of Congress from entering an all-access entrance to the Department of Education as we fight in defense of public education and students.
As President Donald Trump continues to make changes to departments and agencies, it is likely that we're going to see more events like these. This was the 5th such protest just this week. This is Jackie Koppell, NewsNation.
President Trump continues to roll out executive orders, signing over 50 in just his first 2 weeks in office. That's more than any recent president has in their first 100 days in office. But over in Congress, Republican lawmakers have grappled with how to move Trump's massive agenda forward in the shape of 1 or 2 reconciliation bills. Joining me now with the latest from the Capitol is the Hill's White House columnist, Niall Stanage. Niall, as always, it's great to see you.
Great to see you, Julia.
You know, looking at Speaker Johnson, he was at the Capitol until midnight last night, and fingers crossed for them. It seems like we could see congressional Republicans have a tax and spending package coming in the next coming days, I should say. But I want to take a listen to what Johnson had to say leaving his meeting with President Trump yesterday.
We got out the whiteboards and we worked out the framework for what we believe will be the path forward. The idea would be to get the Budget Committee working potentially as early next week, maybe Tuesday, for a markup for the budget resolution, and then we'll unlock this process and get it moving. So
there's a lot in this bill or potential bill extending the 2017 tax cuts, energy expansion, border security. What do we know about the negotiations so far?
So really what we know is more the broad big picture than really anything with very intricate specificity. So what we know is that Speaker Johnson says they're very, very close to a deal, and the central tension there within the Republican conference is between the bulk of the conference, almost everyone who wants to, for example, extend the Trump tax cuts, and fiscal hawks who want to know what is going to happen with all the money that this will cost. There will be a significant bill for those tax cuts over the next 10 years. Fiscal conservatives want to see how those will be offset.
Right. House and Senate Republicans have been at odds, we know, over how to move that forward, over that one bill versus 2 bills. Senator Lindsey Graham has been working on his own $300 billion budget resolution. I want to go again to Speaker Johnson after his meeting at the White House.
our message to our friends and colleagues in the Senate is allow the House to do its work. We are moving this as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. Very positive developments today. We're really grateful to the President for leaning in and doing what he does best.
So on that Graham plan or his budget his proposal, I mean, are we seeing that put on the back burner, or are Senate Republicans moving forward with their own agenda?
So Senator Graham's plan is premised on the idea that the House can't pass its own legislation, and he has said that publicly, saying that to reporters. What this really gets to, Julia, is the tension that, as you know, so often arises between the House and the Senate. Even when the same party is in control of both chambers, there can tend to be quite a lot of butting heads on who should have preeminence and all of that. Speaker Johnson, as we just heard, really wants the House to take the lead. Senator Graham pretty obviously doesn't believe they can do so effectively, and that's what he's using to underpin his $300 billion proposal.
You know, speaking of Senate Republicans, they're at Mar-a-Lago today meeting with the president at what he calls the Winter White House. Look, we talk about that tension between both chambers, even with the same party in control. You know, is there pressure on the president to pick a side, or is he essentially saying, you two have at it, I'm staying out of it for now?
I think there's more efforts to persuade him. I mean, I think when we talk about pressure, that can sound as if they're going to put an ultimatum to him. And as we know, President Trump doesn't tend to react terribly well to ultimatums or pressure of that kind.
Right.
But obviously there are people in the Senate and people in the House Republican Conference who are trying to get him on board with their preferred idea. So there's this battle for his legislative affections going on as to who's going to win out.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, you know, turning in a slightly different direction, Vice President J.D. Vance has been tasked by President Trump to manage the potential sale of TikTok. We know that J.D. Vance has a background as a venture capitalist, and, you know, unlike Donald Trump, he has experience with senators, particularly obviously on the Republican side, so he could be an asset if it comes to the Senate. What do we know so far about these proposals?
Well, what we know is that President Trump has suggested that Microsoft might have some interest in buying TikTok. There are also other people who have expressed an interest, most prominently Frank McCourt, the investor, former owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers, perhaps in conjunction with Kevin O'Leary, the Shark Tank guy, as he's popularly known. Now, the other thing is there are questions about how much people need the whole company to be divested from Chinese influence. Senator Tom Cotton, for example, insists that it has to be a complete removal from what he sees as the influence of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because we know that Republicans like Tom Cotton have sort of been divided, obviously, from the Trump administration on this, and other Republicans want to switch gears towards foreign policy. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been in Washington this week. Earlier today, he met with Speaker Mike Johnson. That came after he met with President Trump earlier this week, but at a joint press conference earlier today, he and Johnson were touting the U.S.-Israeli relationship going forward. Just want to take a listen to that.
First, we renewed immediately the supply of weapons that had been stopped, which we need as we're fighting for our future, for our existence, and for the broader Middle East in a seven-front war. He immediately released those weapons. He issued yesterday these sanctions on this scandalous and corrupt organization, the ICC, that threatens the right of all democracies to defend themselves by themselves. And he's done so many things in the interim, just in 2 weeks.
So Netanyahu obviously referring to the sanctions that President Trump has put on the International Criminal Court. The U.S. does not recognize the jurisdiction of the court, neither does Israel. So what exactly will these sanctions go after?
They will go after the assets of staff of the court, people who are involved in the court, and also perhaps the free movement of those people into the United States. Now, it's still up to the Department of State and the Treasury to decide exactly whom to target. Obviously, the move has pleased Mr. Netanyahu there, who we do have to say does have an arrest warrant out for from the International Criminal Court, even though, as you rightly say, the United States and Israel don't recognize the authority.
Definitely, and those sanctions coming, what, a day after, 2 days after Trump and Netanyahu met, so clearly a topic of conversation. Want to switch gears again, a lot to cover.
Sure.
Trump's birthright citizenship order is back in the court today for the third time this week after 2 federal judges blocked the president's efforts. Where do things stand here in terms of those efforts to block birthright citizenship? Is there any chance this gets through?
I think that so far, I mean, obviously courts have ruled against, or at least they have halted the Trump move to get rid of birthright citizenship. Without getting too deep into the weeds of this, obviously this goes to the 14th Amendment, which appears to guarantee citizenship to anyone born in this country and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which is the phrase that's getting so much debate. So far, the courts seem reluctant to change the historic understanding that that means basically anyone with very limited exceptions, like the children of diplomats.
Right. It's been definitely one of the more controversial moves of the Trump administration so far, and it was expected to face legal challenges. So in one of Trump's latest moves in his first weeks in office, he's dismissed Federal Election Commission Chair Ellen Weintraub. She was appointed in 2002 under fellow Republican George W. Bush. She's been acting commissioner for over 20 years, refusing to leave. What is the impact of this move?
Well, it's obviously causing a big controversy. Now, a lot of people would complain that the FEC has become increasingly toothless in recent years, but Weintraub's argument is not that Trump has no power to remove her. It's that it has been done in an illegal way. Basically, the FEC is comprised of 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and the custom is that if you get rid of anyone, you then nominate someone from that same party, and if that's not your party, you have the leaders of the opposition party say who they want. Trump hasn't done any of that, which is why Weintraub's arguing against it.
Niall Stanage, thanks so much for leading us through a number of different topics. We're literally drinking through a fire hose these days here in Washington. We appreciate your time.
Great to see you.
U.S. troops are preparing a tent camp for some migrants at Guantanamo Bay as the Trump administration considers housing detained migrants in shipping containers. The first group of about 10 migrants landed in Guantanamo Bay on Tuesday. Those individuals have been labeled as the worst of the worst criminal offenders by officials. U.S. forces are assembling a tent camp for that group, who the Department of Defense labeled as too dangerous to be housed at the regular migrant site. U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem will visit the site on Friday as the administration ramps up their immigration efforts. Over 8,000 people have been arrested by federal immigration officials since Trump was inaugurated, and ICE detention facilities are at 109% capacity. And now the Department of Justice is suing the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois over their sanctuary city laws. NewsNation's Alex Capriello has the latest from Chicago on this lawsuit.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on the defense today, standing behind the merits of the Illinois Trust Act, which protects undocumented immigrants and prohibits state, county, and local law enforcement from directly assisting federal immigration officers. The governor says the recently filed Department of Justice lawsuit is a distraction to what the federal government is doing, which he says is violating immigrant civil rights. He says his state's lawyers are already reading through that 23-page lawsuit and will fight back to protect the state's constitution as it's currently written.
Maybe they put up with this kind of garbage in Florida, which is the home state of the head of the DOJ. But in Illinois, we have grit, we are tough, we are strong, and Donald Trump has no idea what he's up against when he attacks Illinois.
The Illinois Trust Act isn't wildly popular among all levels of law enforcement here in the state. I got behind the wheel with the deputies of the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department and spoke directly to the sheriff himself. He says there are times his department notices red flags when someone is arrested or his deputies are alerted to someone who is wanted by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. But without a signed judicial warrant, the sheriff's hands are tied. He wants some amendments made to the existing law that will give his deputies more power to assist in deporting dangerous illegal criminals, and he thinks the recent DOJ lawsuit could be what opens that door to change.
We just learned the Department of Justice is suing the state of Illinois over this Illinois Trust Act. What's your immediate response to hearing that?
Hopefully it opens some doors and some communications between local and feds and say, again, let's re-engineer it, let's do some common sense and draw some lines of demarcation on what local law enforcement can do along with the feds.
The sheriff tells me he does not believe this is a partisan issue, but rather a public safety issue. For NewsNation, I'm Alex Capriello.
NewsNation's Alex Capriello, thank you so much. The U.S. added 143,000 jobs in January during former President Biden's last month in office. The unemployment rate also fell to 4%, according to data released Friday by the Labor Department. The numbers fell short of economists' expectations, who predicted around 170,000 jobs would be added. The Trump administration released a statement on January's jobs reports, lambasting Biden for the figures. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, quote, "Today's jobs report reveals the Biden economy was was far worse than anyone thought and underscores the necessity of President Trump's pro-growth policies. She added, President Trump is delivering on his promise to restore our broken economy, revive small business optimism, create jobs, and ignite a new golden age for America. Trump's agenda includes implementing tax cuts and regulatory curbs to try to bolster the economy. Experts warned that his tariffs could hurt the retail sector and result in jobs losses. That's it for today's Daily Debrief. I'm Julia Manchester. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel. And be sure to come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.